everyone, I'm Akanksha. I want to start by, start by thanking Pritesh. I don't know if he's in the room today, he's the CEO, for encouraging me to do this talk. I have a confession. When he first asked me, I said, maybe. Then I said, no. Then I tried to convert it into a panel and I wasn't allowed to. So I finally said yes with the condition that I would only have this one slide. And maybe come tell you the story of what happened when he asked me to do this keynote. I looked into my bag of usual keynote tricks and out came the state of digital, building culture at the speed of social, or building fandoms for the world's biggest global brands. All things that socialize, actually now we are social, is great at. It just didn't feel relevant because what I've been feeling is that for the first time in the last 15 years, there's this real tension amongst people. I see this in our team. I see this within my sister who sat here today. She's in the industry. Our industry is a little bit in crisis with all of the structural shifts, with the relentless margin pressures. Anyone here who's running an agency hates that term because it's smaller budgets, not big budgets, smaller budgets and big acts. And then there's AI. I spoke to a CCO yesterday outside, and he said to me, when is your talk? And I said, it's at 10:45. He's like, that's too early, I'm not gonna make it. And I appreciate that because I'm not a morning person. But when I told him that the topic is the real campaign is ourselves, he leaned in. I told him how I thought the industry was in crisis, and he looked at me and said, so are you gonna talk about AI? And I'm not gonna talk about AI because AI is a challenge and an opportunity. And how we see it, I think, how we see AI affecting the world is perhaps a reflection of the world inside us. And that's what I want to talk about because that's the thing that really counts. After 15 years of building, I found myself asking similar questions about who I was. I saw this when I came in for the mic check yesterday. I saw a presentation by Andrea, who's the head of marketing, I think, or CMO for Heineken, and there was a slide where there was a quote from her CCO which said, creativity is not what we do, it's who we are. So for those of us who've been in the industry long enough, it is who we are, it is our identity, and that part of it is changing. So who are we? After 15 years of building, I found myself asking the same question. By mid-30s, I'd achieved everything I set out to do. I had financial freedom, I was part of a global network, I had recognition. I also had this thing called an exit, which is the holy grail of many founders. And yet I couldn't answer the simple question of who am I when I'm not running constantly? So I wanted to share a little bit about that today, but let me rewind and tell you about me. The introduction did a great job of doing that, but I moved to Dubai when I was 22, and 2 years later, I accidentally started Middle East's first social media agency. Now the reason I say accidentally, even the Gulf News headline said the accidental entrepreneur, but the reason I say accidentally is because I didn't want to start a business. But it was the middle of the financial crisis, and the job that I had in Dubai, which was a marketing manager of a company, it could no longer sustain me. So I ended up creating a company so I could get a visa to stay in Dubai because it's hard to do that on an Indian passport. The second reason it was accidental is because Socialize was never meant to be an agency. It started as a training company. I wrote my thesis on Web 2.0 and intercultural comms. Yes, back then, social media was not even called social media, it was called Web 2.0. So I wrote my thesis on that, started doing trainings because I thought, isn't it amazing that brands are not using this new technology to try and reach consumers? The intention was never to be an agency. But in one of the training sessions, met with the team at Apple, and when Apple comes calling, you don't say no. So seemingly overnight, became an agency when I put out a tweet and said, looking for interns. And we hired 2 people who worked out of my bedroom, and I paid them, it was genius, in breakfast and lunch, because there was no money. And I got really good at making sandwiches and pasta. Till today, they remain my signature dishes. So we set up Apple's first ever Facebook page, which was called Switch to Mac in Dubai, which is a campaign for university students. Today, that page is the global Apple Facebook page. And, thank you. I only realized that when I was trying to tell our team this story and wanted to put a screenshot of the Switch to Mac Facebook page, and when I typed it, it converted to the global Apple page. I was like, oh, it's amazing. So we set that up, and where was I? So we set up that page, and that was really when we became an agency. After doing that, HP came calling. Then we had Samsung. But then we spoke to Sony and told us we were not allowed to work with Samsung, so I had to say no to a client. It was all wild. I love this industry. I love running an agency. We, understood conflict. We learned a lot with the marketeers who were really the ones who understood the future, the pioneers within social media marketing. It was a wild ride. By 2016, we had become one of the largest independent digital agencies in Dubai. In fact, that year, the Dubai government put us on this list, which is called SME 100, of the 100 fastest growing small medium enterprises in Dubai. I went to receive the award, and 2 seats next to me, I had the founders of Careem sat, so they were 2 ranks above us. Now, Careem was Middle East's first unicorn and got acquired for like billions by Uber, or at least $1 billion by Uber. I wasn't acquired for quite that sum, but I was acquired a year later by a global network called Blue Focus. And 2 years before acquiring us, they had acquired VR Social. So we joined forces with VR Social. And this was a marriage, and this was in 2018, and this was a marriage that was made in heaven because they were very culturally, philosophically aligned to us. I remember we were the first in the Middle East. They were one of the first social agencies in the world. There was a time when Facebook launched Facebook Frames. I don't know how many of you were in the industry when that happened. And there were only 2 branded Facebook frames on the entire gallery, one from Socialize in Dubai and one from VR Social. So it was a great partnership with VR Social. I decided to stay on, of course, and then continue growing, continue scaling, continue winning, until one day, the machine that I had helped build was running me. Now, I don't know how many of you in the room have felt that or are feeling that when the job that you love becomes, is this happening? When the job that you love becomes just the thing that consumes you. And I found myself in that place trying to ask the question of who am I and what is happening at this time of tension. So I'd achieved everything I wanted by mid-30s, but I couldn't answer that question. And this is when, I spoke to other founders as well, and people were communicating similar things. So I realized that at a time when there's all of this change that's happening in our industry, I had, sold the business. So some of the tension that our industry is feeling is some of the tension I felt. And I felt this most clearly post-exit as I tried to transition the leadership and step away. And I felt myself experiencing something that no one tells you about, an identity freefall. I was wondering, am I stepping away too soon? Some other days I was wondering, am I being too controlling? Am I holding on too tight? What is my value if I'm not on the pitch, if I'm not on the call, if I'm not in the room? Some of the questions that I feel like creatives are asking with AI, what is my value in this new world? I found myself asking those questions, and when I spoke to other founders, they whispered similar things, but these are things that no one says out aloud, which is that we know how to scale a business, we know how to come up with campaigns, but no one teaches us how to reinvent ourselves. So I thought perhaps I will share a little bit of what helped me. One of the things that you need when this is happening, this time of industry change, reinvention, another 5-year plan is not going to help you. I promise you. You need a new compass. What helped me was I discovered something called human design. My husband wanted me to say on stage that he's the one who introduced me to it. So I'll say that, shout out. Human design at first felt like a personality test. I love personality tests. How many of you love personality tests? Right? And it's important. Personality tests are a great way to understand yourself, which is key, right? Number A in leadership is you got to understand yourself. But this one was different. It was astrological, so a bit strange, yeah, definitely fringe, okay? But as I dug deeper into it, it helped me understand how I was energetically wired. It'll help me understand my cognition, my distractions, in advanced mode, my digestion, but most importantly, it help me with better decision making. And better decision making, not by thinking mentally, not up here, because the mind is great at calculations, right? It's great at projecting a path forward, but when you're in uncharted territory, when things are uncertain or unknown, the mind guesses, it doesn't guide. So you can't rely on it. In human design, this is called inner authority. And there are like 8 different types of inner authorities. I mean, it's a complex system, right? It's a complex system that I first tried to decode on my own and then used ChatGPT. And I have to say, found that surprisingly helpful. But this was a year back. Now there are like AI agents specialized in human design and similar tools to help people. You have lots of TikTok videos. In fact, now there are even Reddit communities, like entire communities just dedicated to this topic. And last night, I did something because old habits die hard. I went to Google Trends and did a keyword search for human design, and I guess it was not surprising to see that there has been this explosion in the topic, or explosion in searches for human design post-COVID. And it's not alone. There are other tools like Gene Keys, which is a newer, probably simpler tool where there's been this explosion. But it's quite fascinating to see that basically this explosion is a reflection of, I think, a hunger and a need for self-understanding. And that self-understanding is so important at a time when there's all of this change. And look, ultimately for me, human design was not about astrology. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. It is shifting, right? This is better. So, human design for me was not about astrology, just in case that's a little bit too fringe for anyone out here. It was really a language. It was a language that helped me decode the tension between who I thought I should be and how I actually am. And isn't that the same tension that we see with brands and try to solve for brands, which is the tension between perception and truth? And I guess in some ways, when I saw the tension in myself, I couldn't unsee it. I saw that tension in our industry too. We're doing more with less, feeling less fulfilled, or the burnout of brilliance, especially amongst leaders, the people that everyone goes to, but who rarely stop and pause. And that is so important to do when our industry is in transition, because leadership too, our teams don't require us or want us and need us to have all of the answers. They want us to be calm, they want us to be centered, they want us to be clear. So you manage your own nervous system and the room follows. So this summer, in fact, I'm fresh out of it. This summer, I did something that I have never done before. I took a sabbatical, a pause. It was wonderful. It was so different. It's something I would have never really considered doing if it wasn't for having gone through this journey of understanding myself, using human design, etc. Because it's not really a part of our culture to do that. Gap years, it's not a part of our culture. You just keep going. So I did it. And it was the first time in so many years that I wasn't defined by a client brief or a revenue target. So I found myself asking, what's the brief for me? So many of us in the room, we're all collectively brilliant creatives, right? We've done work like we've just seen with Heinz. This is all brilliant work, but how many of us have stopped to ask, what is the campaign for myself, right? So I want to share a frame that was helpful to me and might be helpful to you. Think about a time in your career when you felt most alive. Who were you being? What were you doing? That's the kernel of your purpose. Next, project forward to a year and think about you sitting with your friend or your sister or your parents. You're telling them about something that you did that was really meaningful, a piece of work that was really meaningful. What was that? That's your campaign. And the next one, I'd encourage you to take out your phone or your notepad and think Leanne it was who introduced me with that wonderful introduction. What if Leanne was to introduce you on stage today or tomorrow, right? Introduce you without not mentioning your job or your title. What is the one line that she would say or use to introduce you? Just one line that truly reflects who you are right now. That's your tagline. what would your tagline be? Just one line that says who you are. Would anyone like to share? Okay, I will go first. So, Akanksha achieved everything by 40 and then had the courage to start again with herself. It's not final, it's a draft, it's just something I thought of. But I think just exactly like the brands that we work with, our life deserves drafts, it deserves experiments, it deserves reinvention. At a time like this, some of us need to reinvent. Some of us, as we notice this tension in us, the tension that is in the industry, this tension is not calling us to fight harder, it's calling us to choose differently. So as you notice this tension, I think it's important to think about how you would integrate that into a life, because it's asking us to choose differently. Some of this work that I've done, thinking of the line that I just shared, allowed me to choose differently for me. I changed and evolved my role from an identity of being a founder to a title of being a CEO to now more value areas, leaning in as an advisor, as a caretaker, as an investor, and guiding the business strategically, not controlling the day-to-day. So it was about learning to trust others, to steer the ship, to guide, not to grip, and to use that as a way to continue doing what I have been doing, which is helping the group grow, help and drive growth for the group within our region, drive that growth story in the region. In fact, speaking of which, if there are any founders in the room, especially if you're a founder of an independent agency and you're curious about what joining a global network like We Are Social could look like, please get in touch with me. I would love to talk to you, because I'm curious about what getting into the South Africa market would look like for us. So I would love to have any conversations around that, but I digress. And I'll say one thing, founders in the room would also agree with me and say, and do we have any founders in the room? Okay, great. I would love to talk to you after this talk. And I think you'll agree with me when I say that entrepreneurship is basically self-improvement on fast mode. Everything, your focus, your patience, your decision, all of your weaknesses are dragged out into the limelight. There's nowhere to hide. The market sees everything, and it reflects it back to you without filter or without mercy. So every flaw isn't a beautiful thing that a campaign creates. Every flaw becomes a bottleneck. Every insecurity gets amplified. So it's a tough place to be, but it's also why it's the best game in the world, because every time you grow, your business grows with you. And that's when over years you eventually realize that and discover that the real product that you're building is yourself. So my invitation to you today is to treat yourself as the most important campaign you will ever run. To think of yourself as a brand, to think of your purpose, to think of your campaign, to think about your tagline. I'm gonna ask again, does anyone want to share? No. So think about your purpose, tagline, and do whatever it takes, whether it is journaling, whether it's using tools like human design or Gene Keys, whether it's getting a good coach or a therapist or a shaman, or like my sister did, go into the forest and have some ayahuasca. Or it is to just sit in stillness and meditate. Do what it takes to reconnect with yourself. Because just like the campaigns that we run, if we want to continue building brands that resonate, we need to understand ourselves, and we need to start with ourselves. So treat yourself like the most important campaign that there is. Show yourself the same courage and creativity that we show our brands, because I think you are the brief, you are the brand, you are the campaign, and I think all of us deserve that same creativity, love, curiosity. And that's what I want to share with you today, and I hope it is helpful for you as it's been for me. Thank you.